So welcome back to the Church Guy and the Addict. I'm Don and I'm the Church Guy.
I'm Danny, I'm the addict.
Hey, Danny, we got so wound up on our last session there about boundaries. I think we didn't have a chance to say goodbye to folks. Do you want to say goodbye now or goodbye and hello?
Hello and goodbye.
Anyway, that was a good discussion. And I think we're just going to go right into our conversation today. So from boundaries, we get into tough love. And then what was that? What was the phrase you used? I want to write that down. You said not tough love, but
No, I don't remember.
you remember, I'll have to go back and watch it.
Me too.
True love, not tough love, but true love. If you really love somebody, you'll set
You gotta let them go.
boundaries. Hey?
You gotta let them go to get well.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
true love.
True love. I think that's what you said. It's not tough love, it's true love. Because it is tough to cut people off, though, to set boundaries. And that's sort of what we were talking about in our last session. Today, we want to talk about accountability. And the subject has come up quite a bit in our discussions. I know, and you've always kind of told me, that the person in recovery should really work hard at being accountable. So if you say somebody's going to come pick you up at 3:00, be waiting for them at 3:00. Don't make them wait for you. Like, be accountable, get there early, and I think because what you've shared with me in the past is that somebody who's in recovery has probably broken a lot of people's trust over the years, friends and family. And so they have to work extra hard to gain that trust back. And so if you're accountable, then that goes a long way with people,
Sure.
showing them that you really.
And even if you're going to be 10 minutes late, I mean, today everybody's got a cell phone.
Yeah.
You can text someone, say, I'm running a little bit behind. I'd be 10, 15 minutes late, whatever it may be. But just having enough courtesy. So the person, I mean, on a day like today, it's sunny, but it's a little chilly. And to be standing, I always say, at the bus stop for an extra half hour when the person could sit in their house and then go out a half hour later. And,
Yeah. So being accountable to you shows that you're trying harder. Is that sort of what you're saying?
That you're trying, period. I mean, like, our spouses and family and friends are so sick and tired of us saying sorry. It means nothing anymore. Because for so many times we say, oh, we're sorry, that's not going to happen again. And, we could take a lie detector test and we really meant it. It would never happen again. But the minute we pour some poison into our bodies, all bets are off,
Another thought that comes to my mind when I think of accountability is that it means I've got to be accountable to you. So I have to kind of report or tell you what I've been up to. So in other words, I get home late, you're my wife, and I don't tell you why I'm late. Do you think it's important that if you're in recovery that you become accountable to someone or to people to the point where you give an account?
Sure. Well, you got to be transparent. Because before you used to be a half hour late because you were going to the dope dealer, or you went, had a couple of drinks on the side, or you went to the liquor store and it's hidden in your car and you want to make everything look good. So you're going to have dinner. And once everyone's busy kids are doing their homework, mom's cleaning the dishes or whatever, you're out in the car drinking or getting high or whatever. So yeah, I think it's very important to be transparent and to be accountable, of course. Not only to your spouse, but to your sponsor and to yourself. And I think those who are the church people in our situation that we're talking, they should be accountable to themselves as well. Are they taking care of themselves? Are they getting the rest they need? Are they working on themselves?
So the accountability is a two-way street.
Of course. Of course.
why is it so hard to put yourself in a position where you are willing to be accountable? I think that people think it shows a lack of trust if you have to be accountable.
Well, you know what? I think if you're living in recovery, it's
Mm.
not like a hard thing to do if you want to get well. I'm talking about those who honest to goodnessly want to get well. Because
Yeah.
I have nothing to hide if I'm 10 minutes late, let's say, from coming home. Not that, Bernadette's sitting there with oh, you're 10 minutes late. Where were you? What are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm
Mm.
talking about is, it, let's say it snowed and I had to spend 10 more minutes dusting off the car, and warming up the car so I could see on my drive home. Or the person beside me, same deal, but they didn't have their snow brush because we just had our first snowfall the other day. Do you know what I mean? So
Mm.
I have nothing to hide. Why would I have to make it such a big secret that I helped the person beside me who forgot to
Mm.
put in their snow brush and didn't expect the snow to come or whatever? So you want to be transparent in recovery, at least if you're trying to get well,
Mm.
you know. And I think that those who have these secrets, if you will, are still up to the same old shenanigans. They just want to show their work or their spouse or whomever that oh no, everything's all good. Or if you're habitually late for work every day and it's an issue.
Yeah. My experience has been that people that have sort of have this issue in their lives are pretty good at making up excuses, coming up for reasons for being late. And so they've told, as you said, they've told so many lies to cover up their using that or their drinking that they've kind of wore out the stories. So in other words, you start all of a sudden you jump into the story about brushing off somebody's car, and it's like, sure, yeah, I've heard that one before.
Yeah.
It's
Oh, we're the greatest inventors of excuses. We hit
yeah,
a dog on the way to work and we had to take it to the veterinarians. We got so many. Like, I think addicts and alcoholics should write a book on, 101 excuses for being late for work or being late for home. It'd probably be a
yeah.
number one seller.
Oh my goodness.
For those who are actively using, that is.
Yeah. So being accountable, I wonder if that's a conversation to have with people and say, look, I expect you to be accountable to me, so don't be upset when I ask you questions about, because it seems like an interrogation. If you come through the door, you're half an hour late. Where were you? Do you have any evidence of where you've been? Do you have receipts from the
Yeah,
veterinarian?
probably in the back trunk.
Receipts.
or hidden under the floor mat of the car.
Yeah.
That's the evidence why they were late.
It's funny how something so simple can really create havoc in a person's life. Like something we're all in relationships with people where we accept people coming in late. Um, Monica will say to me, well, where were you? Well, what happened? It's not because she's suspicious. She just knows that I was half an hour late. Something must have gone wrong, or I must have run into somebody at the store, but when it comes now down to the person who's in recovery, then all of a sudden there's like, oh, what are you, suspecting me of something? And people get defensive. Usually if you're guilty, you get defensive, but probably somebody who's in recovery also, feels that they're always under the spotlight.
Well, once again, trust is earned.
Mm.
That's all I can say. So if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, and being accountable for, the ride home takes 10 to 15 minutes, let's say, from work, and you're a half hour late, you obviously went somewhere. Something happened.
Mm.
What'd you do? You know,
Yeah.
and if you got nothing to hide, then you're not all upset and, oh, why are you accusing me of getting drunk or getting high? Well, for the last however many years of the relationship that you were together, 26, 21, whatever, and that was the what you did, then don't be surprised after 2 minutes of sobriety that your spouse doesn't trust you to,
Mm.
where were you? You know, what were you doing?
When you think about it, Danny, it's it must be very challenging for a husband and wife relationship when somebody has, you know, been living in addiction for many years, has broken their trust, has done harm, has alienated themselves from the family, have lost jobs. And then all of a sudden you're back with that person because you're married to them. But there's so many things you have to deal with. I mean, I can't even imagine what that must be like.
Well, sure, and you got to remember that the addict or the alcoholic is washing away their pain, whereas the sober one in the relationship, they're trying to deal with all this sober, so they're not washing away any kind of pain,
Mm,
if you will. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? So
yeah,
it's very traumatic for the other person who is the healthy person, who really, how healthy are that is that person, you know what I mean, after
yeah.
years and years of abuse, whether it's physical, um, what do you call it, communication abuse, it was
Yeah.
what's the word I'm looking for,
Verbal abuse.
verbal abuse, thank you, you know what I
Yeah.
mean, it's just like there's so much healing that that person needs to go, and then here the person who's the actor, they go off to their 12-step program and they get their healing, if you will, but the poor person who's the Christian person, who's the healthy person in the situation, some say go to Al-Anon, some say whatever, but where do they get their healing, you know?
Mm,
Do you know what I mean? So really you have two sick individuals, you know?
mm.
So, so once again, trust is earned, not gained. It's not a privilege.
So I've never
And
really
after
thought of
so
it
many
that
years of
way.
lying,
Never really thought of it that way, Danny. Like two sick people. You expand on that a little bit?
I think I expanded all I could, really. Like if you think about it, you've got the
But
one person,
the sober person doesn't see themselves with the problem.
I understand, but they've been lying for their husband or wife for so many years. Why
Mm,
they're missing work, the verbal and emotional abuse and the physical abuse.
mm,
For years and years, it's got to take its toll. It
mm,
really does. And then the person gets sober, and he's gone from the house again now, because before he was gone to get drunk at the bar or stoned at the alleyway or at his friend's house or whatever. And now he's gone again, but now he's going to meetings and what have you. You
mm,
know what I mean? So he's still not home. Before he wasn't
mm.
home for bad, now he's not home for good.
Right.
Whereas the poor person who's the healthy person, if you will, really has no outlet, has no place
Yeah.
to get well themselves. There's Al-Anon, that's great, but once again, if you got to you got to go somewhere to recharge your batteries. Is my point.
Mm,
You got to get your tank full somewhere, somehow,
yeah.
somewhere. And if we're
There's
talking
something.
about accountability, then my point is that the person who's the well person has to be accountable to themselves as well.
Okay.
They're the victim here. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're the one who's like the mother who's supposed to glue the family together, and it's impossible, you know?
Mm. Since you mentioned the mother, you and I had a conversation earlier today where you said that you always tend to say the guy, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's the reverse. You want to speak to
Yes.
that?
Yes. It's the woman who's the addict or the alcoholic, and the poor husband is the one trying to keep the glue together. And I had a friend of mine who was 6'3" or something, and his wife was like 4'5" or something. And anyway, she used to beat up on him, and he'd come to work with a black eye. And of course, he couldn't say his wife did this to him. He'd say, "Oh, I was out at the bar, and some guy touched my wife, and we got into a fight or whatever." But it's very difficult for a man to to be as upfront as I guess a woman would be, but even too, they both, I think, families that have secrets, if you will, are those unhealthy families, and a lot of times secrets come through addiction or abuse or violence or verbal abuse. You know what I mean? Like, it's sad for everybody, and and it's not uncommon for people to tell their kids, don't tell what happened in this house today or whatever. I hear a lot of that in the rooms of, we don't talk what happens in this house. Everything that happens in the house stays in the house. You hear a lot of that.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So the whole family is drawn into the addiction.
The whole family gets sick, unfortunately.
The whole
Yes.
family gets sick. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd ever heard it framed that way. So I just wanted some clarification on that. I understand it. I just don't like calling the rest of the family sick when one person, has the disease and the problem. What you're saying is they're infecting the rest of the family as a result of this, the drama and trauma and drama that comes out of it all.
And it's not their fault. That's the main thing,
It's
and
not
I'm
their
not
fault.
saying no, it's not their fault. It's just they're a victim of their circumstances. No one wants mommy or daddy to be a fall down, but with that comes a lot of shame and secrets within the household. And the more we talk about stuff today, I mean, the more we hear this stuff, you know.
Mm. Do you think there's enough resources available for people, like through children's mental health or other, things that are set
Well,
up to help people?
they have a lot of different groups, like they have Alateen for the kids of the alcoholic,
Yeah.
be it mother or father, whoever the alcoholic is. They have Al-Anon. And let's face it, if you think back 30 years ago, people probably didn't even understand what the word therapist meant.
Right.
Whereas today they're just, it's just like saying vanilla ice cream. There's just so many of them around and so many different people going to counseling for one trauma or another. So, I think, there's a lot of resources. I mean, you open up your phone book and there's all kinds of different helplines for many different things, even suicide hotline or whatever. But I'm just saying there's a lot of resources, but once again, you have to take advantage of them. And hey, you have to know you have a problem. I think that's one of the biggest things here is a lot of people don't care to admit that they have a problem, if they have a problem. And, and if you're probably the last person to admit you have a problem because you're the owner of the company. You got a big house and multiple cars and everybody looks at you like you're Superman and, you know what I mean? Or you could just be your typical guy who goes to work at a certain job and, but you have a job still and you have your family still there and you got cars in the driveway. So you don't think you have a problem,
Yeah. So the organization Al-Anon, would that be like, who would refer somebody to Al-Anon? Would the person who's in recovery themselves say, okay, now I recognize I have this problem, I'm in recovery, I want the family to go to Al-Anon, or is it usually a conflict? Like, does the person sometimes not want their family there?
Well, let me just say that my sponsor's wife went to Al-Anon before my sponsor went to AA.
Okay.
So, we talked about true love and turning our back, if you will, on the person who's still practicing whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah.
And I think it was because of her learning techniques and what have you to not put up with the stuff that my sponsor was doing was what eventually got him into recovery. Because see, she was getting well while he was still sick.
Right.
You see what I mean? So maybe a friend referred her and said, you know, my husband was an alcoholic too. I went to Al-Anon and this helped me, you know, and one
Yeah.
big thing I've learned on going to Al-Anon meetings and listening to Al-Anon tapes, that if you're there and all you're doing is talk about your husband, that's not Al-Anon.
Right.
Al-Anon's there to help the person who is sick trying to get well. And as they get well, then the person who's going to get sick realizes, because they're not stupid, and they could see all the old tricks and all this stuff that used to make the spouse fall for, whether it was giving money or calling to work sick or whatever the situation may be, doesn't work no more. Then they realize, I got to change. And if I don't change, I'm going to lose my spouse. And in that case, that's what happened there with my sponsor.
Yeah. So Al-Anon is not there to help the family sort of convince their alcoholic father to go into recovery or anything.
No.
It's how to deal with your own life as the child or spouse of an alcoholic.
They're there for themselves,
They're
themselves to get well.
Yeah.
That's
Good.
why they're there. And if you go to an Al-Anon group that is focused more on the drunk than themselves, then you're not in a good Al-Anon group. So I suggest you go to a group that works on yourself.
Okay. Good. Okay, Danny, that's a good subject for today. Accountability kind of flowed into what we did on video number 13 on boundaries. So if you haven't watched number 13 and you find yourself here at accountability, go back and watch boundaries, one video earlier, and you'll see how these two flow together. But Husband Garrett, anything you want to add to that, Danny, before we say goodbye for today?
Not other than I'm looking forward to us getting together for some pizza.
Right on. Sounds good. And now that you got your bike put away,
Yeah.
just in time
Anyway,
for the snow to be
please
gone.
send us your questions or comments.
Right on. churchguyintheattic@gmail.com. Be happy to answer your questions or discuss something that we haven't discussed already. Have a great night, Danny.
Thank you. You
Talk to you
too.
later, brother. Yeah.
God
Bye now.
bless.